Antinatalism, a thought-provoking philosophy. What if having children is actually one of the most selfish things a person can do? It might sound controversial, but this is the central idea behind a philosophy known as antinatalism. To understand it, consider a thought experiment. Imagine you hold a magical key. With it, you can bring a new person into existence, someone who will experience the highs and lows of life. But here's the catch. Their life may be full of joy and wonder, or filled with pain and suffering. The person created has no say in this choice. It's all up to you. Would you turn the key? This question lies at the core of antinatalism, a philosophy that argues against creating new life. One of its leading thinkers, David Benatar, explores this in his book, Better Never to Have Been. He presents a concept called asymmetry. If someone is never born, they don't suffer, which is a good thing. They also don't experience happiness, but since they don't exist, they don't miss it. If someone is born, they will suffer to some degree, no matter how much happiness they might also experience. Benatar argues that avoiding harm carries more ethical weight than providing pleasure. Creating life, then, is unfair because it imposes suffering on someone who never agreed to it. Antinatalism also draws from the real-world suffering around us: poverty, disease, war, environmental collapse. Even in the best lives, there's heartbreak, anxiety, and the fear of death. Some antinatalists say that bringing someone into such a world knowing the risks is either ignorant or selfish. Philosopher Julio Cabrera adds a moral perspective. He believes that procreation is ethically wrong because it disregards consent. It imposes life's burdens without the individual's approval. Cabrera even argues that having a child isn't an act of love, but an act of power, made unilaterally by the parent. Some antinatalists, like Les Knight, founder of the voluntary human extinction movement, take a global view. He believes that choosing not to reproduce is not only compassionate for people, but for the planet. Human activity has caused massive harm from deforestation to climate change. A world without humans, Knight argues, would allow nature to heal. But what about life's joys? The laughter of children, love, adventure, don't these make life worth it? Antinatalists respond that while happiness exists, it's fleeting and always shadowed by loss, uncertainty, and eventual suffering. Even those who find purpose in life must face death, often painfully. To antinatalists, these joys don't cancel out life's fundamental hardships. Critics call antinatalism pessimistic or even nihilistic. But many antinatalists disagree. They say their philosophy isn't about hating life, but about compassion. It's about recognizing how difficult life can be and choosing not to force that burden onto another person. So, back to that magical key. Would you use it knowing the risks? Would you bring someone into a world where suffering is certain, even if happiness is possible? Or would you leave the key untouched, sparing them the pain of existence? Antinatalism doesn't demand a yes or no. It simply invites us to question a core belief of humanity, that creating life is always a good thing. The problem of suffering. Why does suffering exist in a world capable of beauty, joy, and love? If life can offer such wonder, why is it also filled with pain, loss, and cruelty? This question, known as the problem of suffering, has troubled humanity for centuries. It's not just about why suffering happens, but what it means and how we should respond to it. Suffering appears in many forms: physical pain, emotional heartbreak, grief, fear, and despair. What makes it especially troubling is its universality. No matter how wealthy, Powerful or fortunate, every sentient being suffers. This common truth raises profound questions. Is suffering necessary? Is it random? Or does it serve a deeper purpose? Theological and philosophical views. For those who believe in a higher power, suffering presents a moral dilemma. If God is all-powerful and loving, why is suffering allowed to persist? Some suggest it's a test of faith or a result of free will. Others believe it serves spiritual growth, yet these answers often fall short, especially when we witness widespread, seemingly senseless suffering caused by natural disasters or disease. The evolutionary and secular view. Secular thinkers approach suffering through biology and evolution. Pain helps living beings avoid harm. Emotional pain, like fear or grief, serves a survival function. From this view, suffering is not a punishment, but a tool built into life's design. Still, knowing its function doesn't ease its burden. It doesn't make the pain any less real. Existentialist reflections. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and Jean-Paul Sartre saw suffering as fundamental to human life. Nietzsche said, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering." He believed that struggle builds strength. Sartre, meanwhile, saw suffering as a result of human freedom. Our ability to hope exposes us to disappointment. In their view, pain is the price of living a meaningful life. The Buddhist approach. Buddhism places suffering, dukkha, at the heart of its teachings. According to the Four Noble Truths, suffering arises from desire and attachment, our craving for permanence in an impermanent world. The path to reduce suffering lies in mindfulness, wisdom, and ethical living, not by eliminating pain completely, but by understanding and managing it. Psychological insights. Modern psychology echoes this. Research shows that much of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from how we interpret them. For example, losing a job is difficult, but thoughts like, "I'm a failure," worsen the pain. Therapies like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and mindfulness aim to break this cycle, helping people reframe pain and lessen its emotional grip. The future of suffering. Some futurists believe suffering could one day be eliminated through technology reprogramming the brain or creating pain-free virtual realities. But this vision sparks a new question. If we could remove suffering completely, should we? Or would we lose something vital to the human experience? A shared struggle. Ultimately, suffering isn't just a philosophical issue. It's a deeply personal reality. Each of us faces it in our own way. Some find comfort in faith, others in philosophy, relationships, or a sense of purpose. What connects us all is the shared struggle, the search for meaning in our pain, and the hope for something better. Suffering reveals the fragility of life, but also our resilience. It can break us, but it can also unite us. Through it, we discover compassion, courage, and connection. Perhaps that is its most powerful lesson. Life as a cosmic accident. Life wasn't planned, designed, or inevitable. It's the outcome of a cosmic accident, a remarkable sequence of events in an indifferent universe that just happened to align perfectly. From the creation of the first atoms to the rise of conscious beings, every stage of life's journey has been shaped by randomness and chance. But what does this mean for how we view ourselves, our purpose, and existence as a whole? To understand life as a cosmic accident, we need to go back to its beginnings. Around 13.8 billion years ago, the Big Bang marked the start of the universe. From a tiny, intensely hot point, space, time, and matter began to expand. In the chaotic aftermath, particles collided, energy moved, and eventually atoms formed. Over time, gravity brought these atoms together to form stars and galaxies. This wasn't guided by any plan. It was simply the result of physical laws and natural forces. Amid this cosmic activity, a seemingly average star formed about 4.6 billion years ago in an equally average galaxy. Around it, leftover material formed planets. One of those planets, Earth, ended up with a rare combination of features: a stable orbit, a protective atmosphere, and the right conditions for liquid water. Again, this wasn't due to intention. It was a lucky outcome of physics, and chance a cosmic lottery Earth happened to win. Life likely began in Earth's oceans, where simple organic molecules interacted under the right conditions and eventually formed self-replicating structures, the first primitive life forms. From there, evolution took over. Evolution itself is driven by randomness. Mutations occur by chance, and only those that provide an advantage survive. Over billions of years, this process gave rise to the incredible variety of life on Earth, including us beings capable of pondering our own existence. But none of this was guaranteed. If the Big Bang had differed slightly, if Earth's orbit had shifted, or if just one key mutation in our evolutionary history hadn't occurred, we wouldn't be here. The odds of life arising, especially intelligent life, are so low they seem almost miraculous. Yet there's no sign of a guiding force. It all stems from natural processes and countless coincidences. This understanding can be both inspiring and unsettling. On one hand, it highlights how extraordinary our existence is. On the other hand, it reminds us that we're not the center of the universe's story. The cosmos existed long before us and will continue long after we're gone. In that vast timeline, our lives, our struggles, and even entire civilizations are brief. For many, this raises profound questions about meaning. If life is accidental, does it lack meaning? If the universe is indifferent to us, does that make our actions pointless? These are deeply personal questions. Existentialist philosophers, for example, see the absence of built-in meaning as an opportunity rather than a problem. They argue that we can create our own meaning and purpose, and that it is our freedom to do so. Many scientists also find wonder in the accidental nature of life. Rather than feeling diminished by randomness, they see it as a reason to marvel. Carl Sagan famously described humans as star stuff, reminding us that the atoms in our bodies were born in the hearts of dying stars. For him, this connection to the universe was a source of awe and humility. It showed that while we may be small, we are profoundly linked to the cosmos. Seeing life as a cosmic accident also reshapes our view of nature. If we are products of chance, so is every other living thing. This understanding can nurture a sense of connection to all life, from microbes to whales. It reminds us that we are not separate from nature, but an expression of it is brief yet meaningful. At the same time, this awareness can deepen our sense of responsibility. Life on Earth is fragile, and its future depends on the choices we make. Knowing how rare and precious life is can inspire us to protect it, not because a higher power demands it, but because it is intrinsically valuable. In the end, viewing life as a cosmic accident invites us to embrace uncertainty. It encourages us to stop expecting answers or guarantees from the universe. Instead, it calls us to find meaning and beauty in the randomness of it all. Our lives may not be planned, but they are ours. In a universe that doesn't notice our existence, simply living, caring, and seeking understanding becomes a powerful, meaningful act. Efilism, a radical reflection on life. Picture nature, a predator hunting its prey, an insect being eaten, the endless cycle of birth, struggle, and death. Efilism is a philosophy that invites us to look beyond human existence and question life itself, its nature, its purpose, and its consequences. At its core, Efilism suggests a powerful idea. What if stopping life altogether could be the most compassionate choice? To explain, imagine a massive factory that's been running for billions of years. This factory continuously produces living beings, each one programmed to survive, suffer, and eventually die. This factory is evolution, a natural process that has no design or intention, only the goal of passing on DNA. According to ethicists, this system is not only flawed, but deeply indifferent to the well-being of any creature it creates. Take a look at nature's everyday reality. A lion must kill to eat. A zebra runs for its life. Neither chose their role. Both are trapped in a system where suffering is required for survival. What we often call the balance of nature is, from this perspective, a constant cycle of harm and fear. Efilism doesn't stop with animals. Even in human life, no matter how comfortable we face aging, illness, uncertainty, and death. Happiness exists, but it's often brief. In contrast, struggles and pain are a consistent part of life. And this truth applies not just to us, but to every sentient being. Ethicists argue that evolution doesn't care about happiness. It simply promotes survival and reproduction. From this viewpoint, life is not a gift or miracle, but a cycle of need and suffering with no higher meaning behind it. Now imagine this. You're holding a switch. If flipped, all life would end instantly, painlessly, and without suffering. No more fear, no more struggle. Would you flip it? This thought experiment captures the heart of Efilism. It's not a philosophy of hatred or despair, but one of empathy, a desire to prevent the guaranteed suffering that comes with life. Ethicists believe the kindest thing may be to stop the cycle altogether. Of course, many critics find this perspective extreme or unsettling, but ethicists respond by asking, if we wouldn't wish constant suffering on any individual, why allow a system to continue that ensures it for so many? Efilism challenges our deepest assumptions about life and morality. It doesn't offer comforting answers. Instead, it pushes us to confront a difficult question. Is the continuation of life worth the suffering it inevitably brings? Eco-philosophy and deep ecology. Reframing. Our place in nature. Modern civilization has grown in ways that often disconnect us from the natural world. Cities expand. Resources are exploited, and ecosystems are reshaped to meet human demands. But this progress comes at a significant cost. Eco-philosophy and deep ecology offer an alternative perspective, urging us to rethink our relationship with the environment. They challenge the idea that humans are the center of existence, instead promoting a worldview where all life and ecosystems are seen as equally important. Eco-philosophy is a wide-ranging field that explores the moral, spiritual, and philosophical connections between humans and the environment. It's not only concerned with protecting nature, it seeks to transform the way we see and engage with the world. Central to this philosophy is a rejection of anthropocentrism, the belief that human beings are inherently superior to other life forms, and that nature exists purely for our benefit. In contrast, eco-philosophy promotes a holistic view, one where humans are merely a part of a vast, interconnected web of life. A central and influential movement within eco-philosophy is deep ecology, introduced by Norwegian philosopher Arne Næss in the 1970s. Unlike traditional environmentalism, which often focuses on pollution control and resource management, deep ecology addresses the underlying cause of ecological degradation: humanity's flawed relationship with nature. Deep ecology calls for a fundamental shift in consciousness from a shallow, utilitarian mindset to one that recognizes the intrinsic value of all life. In this view, a tree isn't valuable simply for its wood or its role in carbon absorption. It has value because it exists. At its core, deep ecology promotes biocentric equality, the idea that all living beings have an equal right to live and thrive. This doesn't mean ignoring human needs, but it does demand a serious reevaluation of our priorities. Every action must be considered not only for its impact on us, but also on the broader web of life. This approach fosters humility, responsibility, and a sense of belonging within the natural world. Deep ecology also critiques the dominant economic systems that prioritize endless growth and consumption over ecological health. It questions the long-standing narratives of human superiority that have justified the destruction of countless species and habitats. It urges a transformation in areas like agriculture, energy, and industry toward models based on coexistence, sustainability, and respect for all life. Philosophers and activists within this movement often highlight the spiritual dimension of deep ecology. Reconnecting with nature, they argue, is not only essential for the planet, but also for human well-being. Many indigenous cultures have long upheld this view, recognizing humans as part of a larger natural order, with responsibilities to the land and its creatures. Deep ecology draws inspiration from such traditions and integrates them into modern environmental thought. Of course, deep ecology is not without its critics. Some argue that its ideals are too idealistic or unrealistic in a world dominated by economic and political interests. Others raise ethical concerns, such as how to prioritize human needs when they conflict with the well-being of other species. These criticisms reflect the tension between deep ecology's vision and the complex realities of human society. Nevertheless, deep ecology offers a compelling lens through which to understand our environmental crises. It reminds us that the destruction of ecosystems is not only an ecological issue, it is a moral and philosophical failure. Treating nature as a commodity threatens the very systems that sustain life. By envisioning a future rooted in harmony with the earth, deep ecology encourages sustainable practices, community action, and educational efforts that raise awareness of our interdependence with all living things. Perhaps the most radical and transformative idea at the heart of eco-philosophy and deep ecology is their call for a shift in consciousness. They ask us to let go of the illusion that we are separate from nature and instead embrace our place within it. This shift is not easy. It challenges deeply held beliefs, values, and assumptions. But in a time of climate change, species extinction, and resource depletion, this new way of thinking is more urgent than ever. Eco-philosophy and deep ecology may not provide instant solutions, but they offer something deeper: a vision for a more meaningful, just, and sustainable world. One in which humanity lives within its limits, honors the rights of all beings, and finds purpose not in domination, but in connection. This vision is both a challenge and an invitation to redefine what it means to be human in a world that is vast, interconnected, and alive. Negative utilitarianism, a focus on reducing suffering. Imagine a world where the highest moral priority isn't maximizing happiness, but minimizing suffering. This is the foundation of negative utilitarianism, a thought-provoking and sometimes controversial ethical approach. Unlike traditional utilitarianism, which seeks to increase overall happiness, negative utilitarianism centers on reducing pain and suffering. It argues that alleviating suffering should take precedence over promoting pleasure, because pain tends to have a deeper and more urgent impact on human life. Philosopher Karl Popper, an early supporter of this view, believed that avoiding misery should be our first moral goal. Relieving suffering, he argued, immediately improves people's quality of life, something a fleeting moment of happiness might not achieve. In practice, the idea often feels intuitive. Helping people in need, offering food, shelter, medical care, or mental health support are all actions that directly reduce suffering. These efforts clearly align with the core of negative utilitarianism. However, this philosophy also encourages us to consider suffering on a much broader scale. A more controversial implication is that if the amount of suffering in the world outweighs happiness, then drastic measures might be justified to prevent future suffering. For example, some interpretations suggest that if life inevitably includes suffering, then not creating new life might be the moral choice. This idea connects with antinatalist views, which argue against procreation to avoid potential suffering. These perspectives challenge us to reflect on deep, often uncomfortable questions about existence and ethics. Critics point out that a strict focus on reducing suffering can lead to extreme conclusions, such as the idea that ending all sentient life could be justified to stop pain entirely. While most supporters of negative utilitarianism reject such extremes, these concerns expose the philosophical tensions at play. Another issue lies in how we measure suffering. Pain is subjective and differs across individuals and situations. What one person finds intolerable, another might endure more easily. This variation makes it hard to apply negative utilitarian principles in a consistent, practical way, especially at a societal level. How do we weigh one person's suffering against another's? How do we judge short-term pain versus long-term well-being? Despite these difficulties, negative utilitarianism offers powerful insights, especially in areas like global health, where resources are limited and tough choices must be made. It encourages us to prioritize helping those in greatest distress, first addressing urgent needs like severe illnesses or crises. On a personal level, this philosophy also challenges us to rethink how we view suffering. Instead of glorifying pain as a path to strength or success, it emphasizes compassion and care as moral imperatives. By recognizing the seriousness of suffering, we can deepen our empathy and feel a stronger sense of responsibility toward others. Ultimately, negative utilitarianism doesn't deny the value of happiness. Rather, it emphasizes that relieving suffering is a morally urgent task, one that deserves our attention and action. Even small acts of kindness and support can make a meaningful difference. While the philosophy may spark debate, it brings to light a universal truth. Helping those who are suffering is a deeply human goal, one that transcends cultures, beliefs, and ideologies. The paradox of freedom. Freedom is one of humanity's deepest aspirations, yet it's full of contradictions. At its heart lies a paradox, the tension between our longing for total autonomy and the very limitations that give freedom its meaning. Imagine living in a world where you could do anything with no laws, no rules, no expectations. At first, That might sound liberating, but without structure, our choices can lose meaning. When everything is allowed, nothing feels truly important. This is the paradox. Absolute freedom can end up feeling like no freedom at all. For freedom to be meaningful, it must exist within certain boundaries. This becomes clearer when we look at how freedom is tied to responsibility. To be free means having the power to choose, but with that power comes the burden of facing the consequences. Real freedom requires us to take ownership of our actions, yet responsibility can feel heavy. The more freedom we have, the more responsibility we carry, and this creates a delicate balance. Consider a society where people are free to speak and act however they like. That same society must also have systems of accountability to prevent harm. Rules, which might seem like restrictions, are what actually allow freedom to flourish. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre explored this tension through existentialism. He believed that humans are condemned to be free, meaning we must face our choices without relying on external guidance. This kind of freedom can be terrifying when everything is a choice. How do we know what really matters? Sartre argued that we must create our own values, but doing so is difficult and often unsettling. Freedom also takes on new complexity in the context of relationships and society. We are social beings. Freedom cannot exist in isolation. To live together peacefully, we must sometimes give up parts of our freedom for the benefit of others. Laws, for example, may limit individual behavior, but they help build a stable society where everyone can enjoy freedom. Without rules, the strong could dominate the weak, and true freedom would be out of reach for many. Even our desires complicate the idea of freedom. People often think of freedom as being able to do whatever they want, but unchecked desires can enslave us. Addiction, obsession, or the constant pursuit of success can trap us in cycles that reduce our autonomy. In this way, chasing every impulse can take away our deeper freedom, the freedom to live in line with our true selves. This idea is central to Stoicism, a philosophy that teaches that real freedom comes from self-control. According to the Stoics, freedom isn't about removing constraints, but about mastering ourselves. By focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we can't, we free ourselves from being ruled by emotions or external events. For them, wisdom and integrity, not endless options, are the foundations of freedom. In today's world, we are surrounded by choices. There are more career paths, lifestyles, and products than ever before. But this abundance often leads to anxiety. Too many choices can make us doubt our decisions and feel less satisfied. Ironically, having unlimited freedom can make us feel trapped and unsure. Freedom also varies across cultures and history. Many movements have defined freedom as liberation from political, social, or economic oppression. But even when people break free from one form of control, new systems of power often emerge. Revolutions may end one tyranny only to replace it with another. This shows that the pursuit of freedom is complex and often filled with unintended consequences. On a personal level, we experience this paradox in our everyday lives. We might think freedom is doing what we want when we want, but those momentary desires can conflict with our long-term goals. Discipline, while it may feel limiting, is often what enables lasting freedom. A musician who practices daily gives up short-term pleasures but gains the ability to express themselves through music. In the same way, staying true to our values and commitments can provide a sense of direction that unrestrained freedom cannot. The paradox also shows up in how we view progress. Modern technologies promise more freedom to connect, move, and learn. Yet these same tools can control us. Social media, for example, gives us a voice but can also trap us in echo chambers and addictive patterns. What we build to liberate ourselves can become what limits us. In the end, the paradox of freedom reveals something essential about being human. Freedom isn't about having no limits. It's about navigating those limits with purpose. Boundaries and responsibilities aren't the enemies of freedom. They are its foundation. True freedom isn't unlimited choice. It's the ability to live in alignment with our values, to find purpose amid constraints, and to connect with others while remaining true to ourselves. This paradox doesn't weaken the idea of freedom, it deepens it. It challenges us to reflect on what we value, how we live, and what it truly means to be free. Consider a society where people are free to speak and act however they like. That same society must also have systems of accountability to prevent harm. Rules, which might seem like restrictions, are what actually allow freedom to flourish. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre explored this tension through existentialism. He believed that humans are condemned to be free, meaning we must face our choices without relying on external guidance. This kind of freedom can be terrifying when everything is a choice. How do we know what really matters? Sartre argued that we must create our own values, but doing so is difficult and often unsettling. Freedom also takes on new complexity in the context of relationships and society. We are social beings. Freedom cannot exist in isolation. To live together peacefully, we must sometimes give up parts of our freedom for the benefit of others. Laws, for example, may limit individual behavior, but they help build a stable society where everyone can enjoy freedom. Without rules, the strong could dominate the weak, and true freedom would be out of reach for many. Even our desires complicate the idea of freedom. People often think of freedom as being able to do whatever they want, but unchecked desires can enslave us. Addiction, obsession, or the constant pursuit of success can trap us in cycles that reduce our autonomy. In this way, chasing every impulse can take away our deeper freedom, the freedom to live in line with our true selves. This idea is central to Stoicism, a philosophy that teaches that real freedom comes from self-control. According to the Stoics, freedom isn't about removing constraints, but about mastering ourselves. By focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we can't, we free ourselves from being ruled by emotions or external events. For them, wisdom and integrity, not endless options, are the foundations of freedom. In today's world, we are surrounded by choices. There are more career paths, lifestyles, and products than ever before. But this abundance often leads to anxiety. Too many choices can make us doubt our decisions and feel less satisfied. Ironically, having unlimited freedom can make us feel trapped and unsure. Freedom also varies across cultures and history. Many movements have defined freedom as liberation from political, social, or economic oppression. But even when people break free from one form of control, new systems of power often emerge. Revolutions may end one tyranny only to replace it with another. This shows that the pursuit of freedom is complex and often filled with unintended consequences. On a personal level, we experience this paradox in our everyday lives. We might think freedom is doing what we want, when we want, but those momentary desires can conflict with our long-term goals. Discipline, while it may feel limiting, is often what enables lasting freedom. A musician who practices daily gives up short-term pleasures, but gains the ability to express themselves through music. In the same way, staying true to our values and commitments can provide a sense of direction that unrestrained freedom cannot. The paradox also shows up in how we view progress. Modern technologies promise more freedom to connect, move, and learn. Yet these same tools can control us. Social media, for example, gives us a voice, but can also trap us in echo chambers and addictive patterns. What we build to liberate ourselves can become what limits us. In the end, the paradox of freedom reveals something essential about being human. Freedom isn't about having no limits. It's about navigating those limits with purpose. Boundaries and responsibilities aren't the enemies of freedom. They are its foundation. True freedom isn't unlimited choice. It's the ability to live in alignment with our values, to find purpose amid constraints, and to connect with others while remaining true to ourselves. This paradox doesn't weaken the idea of freedom. It deepens it. It challenges us to reflect on what we value, how we live, and what it truly means to be free. Philosophical pessimism. A clear-eyed look at life's hardships. Philosophical pessimism is built on the idea that life is naturally full of struggle, suffering, and unmet desires. Rather than embracing the hopeful narratives often tied to human progress, this perspective encourages a sober reflection on life's difficulties. Importantly, philosophical pessimism isn't meant to depress or discourage. It aims to face reality with honesty. It urges us to question the commonly held belief in progress, happiness, and even the purpose of life itself. At the heart of this philosophy is Arthur Schopenhauer, a German thinker who believed that human suffering stems from the will to live, a blind, relentless force that drives all living beings. This will lead to endless desire, where satisfying one need simply gives rise to another, creating a constant cycle of frustration. According to Schopenhauer, this unending striving not only drains us, but ultimately ensures that true contentment remains out of reach. Schopenhauer's bleak outlook goes beyond personal suffering. He saw pain as a fundamental part of existence. Predators chase prey, illness weakens bodies, and death shadows every life. While moments of joy do exist, they're often fleeting or come at someone else's expense. For him, these short-lived pleasures weren't signs of life's worth, but brief pauses in an otherwise painful reality. Another key figure, Friedrich Nietzsche, often associated with existentialism, also engaged with pessimistic ideas. Unlike Schopenhauer, Nietzsche didn't advocate resignation. Instead, he proposed a philosophy of affirmation embracing life, chaos, and hardship as essential aspects of existence. He believed that recognizing life's difficulties should inspire us not to despair, but to reimagine how we respond to them. Romanian philosopher Emil Cioran brought a deeply personal lens to pessimism. His writings explore the absurdity of existence, the inevitability of death, and the emptiness of many of our ambitions. He described life as a constant battle against despair, where rare moments of clarity often uncover the hollowness behind our pursuits. For Koren, pessimism wasn't a problem to solve, but a lens to see life more truthfully. One of philosophical pessimism's most striking contributions is its critique of progress. While many believe in the idea of continuous improvement through technology, society, or personal growth, pessimists challenge this view. They argue that while circumstances may evolve, the core human experience of suffering remains unchanged. Technological advances may ease some burdens, but they often bring new forms of discontent. Similarly, societal progress may improve external conditions, but it cannot erase existential pain or the limits imposed by mortality. Philosophical pessimism also questions the modern obsession with happiness. The constant chase for happiness can lead to disappointment, as happiness is often elusive and temporary. Instead of relentlessly seeking an ideal state of contentment, pessimists suggest we accept life's flaws and limitations. This doesn't mean giving up. It means living without the pressure to find perfect fulfillment. This perspective also offers comfort in shared suffering. Since pain and struggle are universal, they can foster connection and compassion. We don't have to care for one another because life is perfect, but because we all face similar battles. In this way, pessimism nurtures empathy and solidarity. Philosophical pessimism acts as a necessary counterweight to overly cheerful or simplistic worldviews. In a culture that often glorifies success and positivity, pessimism reminds us that hardship is a natural and valid part of life. It encourages us to remain grounded, to accept reality without being overwhelmed by it. Critics often label pessimism as negative or defeatist, claiming it ignores the beauty and joy of life. However, most pessimists don't deny that such moments exist. They simply believe those moments shouldn't overshadow the reality of suffering. For them, acknowledging the full spectrum of life, including its darkness, is essential for truly understanding and appreciating it. Philosophical pessimism doesn't offer easy answers or comforting illusions. It doesn't promise a better future or hidden meaning behind suffering. Instead, it urges us to face life as it is without denial or sugarcoating. This honest confrontation can be freeing. When we release unrealistic expectations, we begin to live more genuinely, finding meaning in the very act of being alive. In the end, philosophical pessimism is not about despair. It's about honesty. It asks us to face life without flinching, to acknowledge pain without turning away. And in doing so, it deepens our understanding of what it means to be human. A complex blend of sorrow, joy, hope, and doubt. The red button thought experiment. Imagine a red button sitting in front of you. Pressing it would instantly and painlessly erase all of humanity. No suffering, no lingering effects, just the complete end of the human race. Would you press it? This is the essence of the red button thought experiment, a deceptively simple scenario that prompts profound reflection on the value of existence, the nature of suffering, and the moral weight behind our decisions. It begins with the premise that humanity is deeply flawed. War, environmental devastation, inequality, and widespread suffering are persistent realities. The person facing the button must ask, does human existence cause more harm than good? Would the absence of humanity lessen the suffering we inflict on each other and on the planet? The button offers a radical solution: the end of all human suffering forever. But this isn't about making impulsive decisions. It's a call to deeply consider the complexities of human life. At its core, it forces us to weigh the value of life itself. Is existence inherently meaningful, even in the face of suffering? Some believe that life, despite its pain, holds the potential for love, creativity, and growth. Others argue that the scale of suffering, both human and non-human, eclipses these moments of beauty. Philosophers like Schopenhauer saw life as a cycle of desire and dissatisfaction, where happiness is fleeting and pain is constant. From this perspective, pressing the button might seem merciful. Yet others contend that suffering gives depth to life, that without it, joy and love would lose their meaning. Ethically, the thought experiment also raises a troubling question. Even if one believes erasing humanity would end suffering, does anyone have the right to make that decision for everyone? Humanity is not a single experience. For every person living in despair, another may find deep purpose and joy. The red button reduces this diversity to a binary choice, assuming one viewpoint can represent all. Then there's hope. Humanity, though flawed, has shown resilience and the capacity for progress. Scientific discoveries, acts of kindness, and movements for justice reflect our potential to improve. Pressing the button would not only eliminate suffering, but also the possibility of a better future. For some, environmental concerns weigh heavily. Humans have caused massive ecological damage, from species extinction to climate change. Without us, Earth might heal, returning to a state of natural balance. But this raises another question. Does nature have value if no one is around to witness it? If humans vanish, who will appreciate the planet's recovery, and does that even matter? The experiment also highlights our personal biases. The impulse to press the button may stem from frustration or despair, while choosing not to press it may reflect a deep-seated aversion to causing harm, even hypothetically. The red button reveals the ongoing tension between emotion and reason and challenges us to confront our core beliefs. Some propose a twist. What if the button is an illusion, a test of our ethical maturity? In that view, the button isn't meant to be pressed. Its very presence invites us to reflect on our values, and by refusing to press it, we affirm the worth of human existence, with all its flaws. In the end, the experiment isn't about whether the button is pressed. It's about the questions it raises. It asks us to wrestle with the complexity of existence where joy and suffering, destruction and hope are inseparable. It challenges us to think deeply about life, morality, and our role in the universe. And in that struggle, we discover something vital, a deeper understanding of ourselves, our relationship to humanity, and the weight of the choices that define our shared existence. Misanthropy in philosophy. Philosophy often reflects on the flaws of humanity, so much so that some philosophers have questioned whether humanity even deserves its place in the world. Misanthropy, or the deep distrust and critique of human nature, has long been a recurring theme. It doesn't mean hating individuals, but rather questioning humanity as a whole, its tendencies, choices, and the consequences of its actions. Philosophical misanthropy goes beyond mere cynicism. It's a serious reflection on how humanity fails to live up to its ideals, often highlighting the harm we cause to ourselves, others, and the planet. For example, Arthur Schopenhauer rooted his misanthropy in skepticism about human behavior. He believed that people are driven by a blind will to live, a force that leads to endless struggle, competition, and suffering. In his view, humans are not rational or moral beings, but rather selfish and driven by irrational desires. Friedrich Nietzsche offered a different perspective. While he criticized humanity's herd mentality and tendency to avoid discomfort and growth, he didn't entirely reject humanity. Instead, Nietzsche viewed these flaws as challenges that we must overcome. His misanthropy called for transformation, encouraging people to confront their weaknesses and strive for self-improvement. Historically, Diogenes of Sinope, a key figure in cynicism, openly criticized human hypocrisy and vanity. He's famously known for walking the streets with a lantern, searching for an honest man. Diogenes rejected societal norms, believing that humanity's obsession with wealth, power, and status had ruined its moral core. His misanthropy came from disappointment, not hatred, a frustration with the failure to live virtuously. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, though more optimistic, also expressed misanthropic ideas. He believed humans were naturally good, but civilization had corrupted them. Society's pursuit of progress and materialism led to inequality, greed, and moral decay. Rousseau's critique wasn't without hope. He believed redemption was possible through simplicity and a return to nature. In modern philosophy, misanthropy often targets humanity's environmental impact. Thinkers like Arnonnes and advocates of deep ecology criticize the human-centered worldview that has led to the destruction of ecosystems. From this view, humanity is seen as a damaging force that prioritizes its needs over the well-being of the planet. Misanthropy can also take an existential form. For instance, Émile Cioran, a 20th century philosopher, wrote about the futility and absurdity of human existence. He believed our constant search for meaning often hid deeper issues: arrogance, destructiveness, and our inability to face our limits. Despite this dark outlook, Cioran's work also reveals a certain dark humor and acknowledgement of human resilience. Critics of misanthropy argue that it can be too negative and dismissive of human potential. They point to acts of kindness, creativity, and progress as proof that humanity is capable of greatness. While misanthropy focuses on our failures, it can overlook our strengths. Compassion, existential loneliness. No matter how connected we are, how deeply we love, or how closely we bond with others, there remains a part of us that is unavoidably alone. This is the essence of existential loneliness, a deep, pervasive sense of solitude that does not arise from being physically alone, but from the very nature of existence itself. It's the realization that as individuals, we are ultimately isolated in our inner experiences. We carry the weight of our existence alone. Unlike social isolation, or the temporary feeling of missing someone, existential loneliness stems from knowing that no one can fully understand or share the entirety of our internal world. No matter how clearly we express ourselves or how deeply we connect, our subjective experience remains uniquely our own. This inherent separateness is a fundamental aspect of being human. Philosophers and writers have long wrestled with this profound isolation. Søren Kierkegaard, often seen as the father of existentialism, described existence as a solitary journey. He believed that facing this solitude was essential for true personal growth and authenticity. For him, acknowledging our aloneness was necessary to live a meaningful, genuine life. Friedrich Nietzsche echoed this idea in his concept of the Übermensch, or overman. He believed that the path to self-realization was inherently lonely, requiring individuals to rise above societal norms and define their own values. For Nietzsche, existential loneliness was not a burden to escape, but a source of strength and individuality. The solitude of standing apart and forging one's own path was central to his idea of a fulfilled life. Existential loneliness is also closely tied to our awareness of mortality. As conscious beings, we know that life is finite and that no one else can accompany us into death. This realization creates a deep solitude, a recognition that we alone must face what lies beyond. Philosopher Martin Heidegger emphasized this in his concept of being toward death, asserting that our awareness of death shapes how we live and understand our existence. In this light, existential loneliness becomes an inescapable part of life, woven into our very understanding of its fragility. Yet this loneliness can also be a wellspring of creativity and insight. Artists, writers, and thinkers have often used their experiences of isolation to create works that deeply move others. Franz Kafka's writings, for example, are filled with themes of alienation and solitude, yet they speak powerfully to the universal human experience of disconnection. This paradox, that something so deeply personal can also be so widely shared, highlights one of the unique aspects of existential loneliness. Through recognizing our isolation, we can connect with others who feel the same. This form of loneliness also raises profound questions about the nature of relationships. Can we ever truly know another person, or are we always limited by the boundaries of our own subjectivity? Jean-Paul Sartre explored this dilemma in his existential philosophy, particularly in his play No Exit. He suggested that while we yearn for connection, we often fail to understand others and instead objectify them in our efforts to bridge the gap between self and other. For Sartre, this struggle for authentic connection is an unavoidable part of the human condition. Importantly, existential loneliness isn't something to fix or avoid. Many existential thinkers view it as an invitation, a chance to confront life's deeper truths. By facing our aloneness, we're pushed to define meaning, purpose, and identity on our own terms. Though this can be a source of anxiety, it can also lead to profound self-discovery and growth. In this way, existential loneliness is both a challenge and a gift. It urges us to seek authenticity and to understand ourselves more deeply, even in a world that often feels disconnected. Modern psychology also acknowledges this, suggesting that accepting existential loneliness can foster resilience and self-acceptance. Recognizing it as a natural part of life helps us move away from feelings of inadequacy and instead focus on creating meaningful, albeit imperfect, connections with others. These connections may not eliminate our solitude, but they offer comfort, empathy, and a sense of shared humanity. Existential loneliness reminds us of both the limits and the richness of being human. While no one else can live our lives, think our thoughts, or feel our feelings for us, the effort to connect, to try and bridge the gap, is what gives relationships their depth. Ultimately, existential loneliness is neither good nor bad. It simply is. It challenges us to look inward, to face our fears, and to carve out our own paths in a complex, often uncertain world. By embracing our aloneness with courage and compassion, we can live more authentically, finding meaning not by escaping loneliness, but by walking through it. In sum, this deep awareness of solitude can lead to misanthropy, a distrust or disdain for human connection. But for others, it becomes the very reason to seek deeper understanding and compassion. How we respond to existential loneliness may shape not only how we view others, but how we ultimately come to view ourselves.